This is how law review editors edit articles. Here is an early draft of an article published in the UC Davis Law Review. I will talk about the comment bubbles and track changes in this draft, which were made by the editor who worked on this draft. In this first comment, the editor suggests adding a citation to the Coase source because the sentence contains direct quotes from this source. While our editors typically do not make substantive edits, they will request that the author add citations where it could improve the quality of the article. This is useful in earlier drafts because authors may not have finished adding all of their citations yet, or they may include placeholders to update at a later time. Here, the flagged sentence includes the quote, "diminishing returns to management," but there is no associated citation. Based on the context of this paragraph, it appears that this language is quoted from the source authored by Coase, who is quoted in the preceding sentences. In this comment, the editor noticed that the footnote citation included an internal cross-reference to a range of other footnotes within this article, but the specific footnote numbers are missing. The author probably drafted the citation as a placeholder. In early drafts, authors may still be adding, removing, or reordering footnotes, so the footnote numbering is still in flux. Thus, authors may hold off on including the specific footnote numbers to these cross-references until the draft is more developed. Here, the editor took the initiative to find a range of footnotes that provided support for the assertion that measures of industries and markets can diverge sharply. This is a great way to help the author save time during their next round of revisions because the author might not immediately recall which footnotes they meant to cite. One note about communication style in the editor comments. It can often be a good idea to hedge suggested edits in order to convey deference to the author. For example, here, the author might disagree with the suggested range of footnotes, so the editor acknowledged in the comment that this might not have been the author's intended footnote range. This comment bubble is a suggestion for the author to consider adding more details to the paragraph to help emphasize a particular point that comes up later in the article. You'll notice that this comment is quite long in comparison to the other editor comments. In general, I would try to keep comments short because that can help the author more quickly identify what is the request or main point that the editor is making. But if a complicated point requires more explanation, there's nothing strictly wrong about drafting a longer comment in a few instances. Here, Schumpeterian process is a term that the general reader of a legal journal might not be familiar with, so the editor suggests modifying or omitting this term. This is another comment where the editor suggested a range of footnotes to add to the placeholder citation. Here, the editor asks the author to add a citation for the 15 to 25% statistic in the paragraph. The editor pointed out that he found this statistic in the Shields Online source that is cited in the next footnote. With an added footnote, current footnote number 214 would then become footnote number 215, and the full citation would need to be changed into an id short citation because a newly added footnote 214 would cite the same Shields source. The next two comments are more editor suggestions of footnote ranges to add to the placeholder citations. You may notice that the editor added a placeholder PIN for a missing pinpoint citation in footnote 274. The editor adds several of these placeholders throughout the draft. Since the first round of edits does not focus on line editing each of these footnotes, a different editor in the next round of edits will check this footnote and recommend a pinpoint citation. Here is an editor suggestion for the author to consider clarifying a point made in the paragraph to possibly improve readability for a general reader. The editor also fixed the spelling of CRISPR in the paragraph. Since the correction of this typo is clear, there is no need to explain in a comment bubble. Here is another comment suggesting a range of footnotes for the placeholder citation. This sentence references a company merger that was described in a previously cited source, so the editor suggests adding a footnote to cite to the same source here. Here, the editor asks the author to consider adding citations to the Clayton Act because the paragraph describes details of this statute. This sentence, flagged by the editor, talks about a judgment entered by a court, so adding a citation to the court case would be a good idea. There are a few sentences here that talk about points that were previously raised in this article, so the editor suggests adding a supra-internal cross-reference to the previous parts of the article. Footnotes 407 and 408 are examples of internal cross-references to previous parts of the article. But note the blue booking fix because infra should be used when referencing parts of the article that appear after the footnote. In contrast, supra is used when referencing a part of the article that appears before the footnote. Here is an example request to add a source supporting the assertion that the patent cliff of explorations has field mergers and acquisitions. This page has two requests to add sources. One for the assertion that even when an industry appears fragmented overall, individual markets within industries may be highly concentrated. And another request for the assertion that costs in the biopharma and agriculture biotechnology are compounded by regulation, which is absent from the software industry. Here is a request to add a footnote with supporting authority. The author later pointed out that this was the author's own assertion, which is one reason why the author chose to phrase the sentence using may instead of stating definitively that consolidation does contribute. Thus, a supporting authority would not be required here. The next two comments are more requests for adding footnotes with supporting authority. And these next two comments flag edits that were made to the placeholders in the footnote citations. Here is a request for a source describing the example trade groups mentioned in the paragraph. Unlike previous placeholders for internal cross-reference citations, the editor here is not exactly sure which footnote range the author meant to cite, so he asked the author to clarify. Here is a request to add supporting authority for the assertion that federal support plays an important role in turning academic discoveries into commercial prototypes. And that concludes this walkthrough of an example edit of a law review article.